Hi, everybody. My name is Shadley Gray. I am part of the AMI team. We have kicked off this webinar series just at the beginning of this year. This is our third presentation. We'll be doing these twice a month on the first and third Tuesday of every month at noon Central Time, 11 o'clock Mountain. Today's guest is Dmitry Rokhfeld, who is the CEO and founder of Triple Checker, which is a platform that helps ensure your websites are clean of errors. So I'm just going to turn it over to him and let him do more of an introduction and get started with his presentation. Take it away, Dmitry.
Sounds great. I appreciate Shadley. I'm really excited to give this presentation. Typos and website errors, believe it or not, is a topic I'm very, very passionate about and have been pretty much my entire life from the first typo I discovered on a book and the thousands since. And so I have a presentation that I'll be sharing now. But I would love for this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to put any questions, comments in the chat, and I think the AMI team will kind of surface those over to me. We'll also have an opportunity to questions if you have any. Just to confirm, can you see my screen?
You can, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the title of the presentation is why agencies need better proofreading solutions. Yes, that is a typo, an intentional typo in the title slide. What gets me really, really excited about this topic is it's a pain point that I've experienced on my own in prior companies. And as I've really delved into this topic further, I've discovered it's an incredible common pain point that no solution to date has really been able to address, but can have real meaningful impact on a business's reputation and sales and SEO. And so I'm really happy to give this presentation and hopefully you'll be able to take something out of it. As far as the agenda, I'll go through my background and how that led me to trying to address this problem and founding this company. I'll go over, what do I consider to be website errors and what potential impact might they be having, on your website and on your company. Why current solutions you may or may not be using are not sufficient. What is Triple Checker and how we believe we can help. I'll show you an actual sample report so you could see kind of what our platform looks like. And then, as I mentioned, there will also be a Q&A opportunity at the end if you have any further questions. So my background, before being the founder and CEO of Triple Checker, I was the founder and CEO of a completely, of a company in a completely different space. It was called Machinio. It was a search engine for used machinery. So it's about as unrelated as you can get with Triple Checker. But there was one common element. Over the 8 years of running Machinio, every few months, I would discover some typo on one of our content pages. And when I did, obviously, I was incredibly frustrated, in part because I care a lot about this issue. But also, every time I discovered a typo or a mistake or a link that didn't work as it should have, it left me with a lot of questions. Some that could be answered, like how long had that typo been there? Who left that typo? But the key questions could not. And those included things like how many potential clients that visited that page noticed that typo? And then of those clients, how many ended up not submitting a contact form, not engaging with our solution because that typo introduced some level of doubt about our company, some level of doubt about our attention to detail. And so every single time I would discover, I would try to put in place, new workflows, new solutions, new processes that would prevent those from happening. But ultimately, ever worked 100% of the time because no solution at that time existed that was constantly rescanning our website for typos. And so I knew then that this was a kind of an interesting problem that I wanted to solve, in part because I care a lot about typos, and in part because it was a pain point that I kept experiencing over and over. And no matter what processes and workflows we changed in our company, they still kept happening. And so years later, after I was no longer involved with Machinio, I decided to kind of find a way to try to address this pain point, because I figured if it was happening to me, somebody that cares a lot about this problem, odds are it was happening to a lot of different companies. And so when I talk about kind of website errors and typos and what we're trying to solve, what am I actually referring to? So it's a group comprised of spelling mistakes, so receive being misspelled, there's grammatical errors, more than, typos. The common one are duplicate words like the and ands, but also a lot of other content errors that you tend to find on websites. They could be outdated copyrights. We're in a new year now. I think last time I checked, 30–40% of websites, they'll say, copyright 2024. I'm sure it'll take some time to get to 2025. There's still a lot of websites that mention 2023 or 2022. And these are all like signals that potential clients might view on your website. And when they do, it just makes them question the company a little bit further, question the level of detail, question the overall legitimacy. And that's something obviously you don't want with any of your potential customers, because you want them to really just focus on whatever content you have that's trying to promote some sort of service or solution or whatever it is that you're trying to sell them on. And also things like lorem ipsums, placeholder text that you might be forgetting to change. And the last group are broken links. So that includes both internal links, so links that point to other pages from your website, and also external links, so links that might be pointing externally to other websites. So now you might be wondering, okay, typos, of course, no one likes typos. If we can avoid them, we would. But are there real implications, or is it very much like theoretical, nice to have if you could avoid them, but not problematic if you have them? So over the last 10 years, there have been a number of studies done by various companies looking at this very question and really trying to answer, what is the real life impact to a website if a customer or visitor notices a typo. And as you'll see as I kind of walk through these various kind of bullet points, there are real implications to your business. It's not theoretical, but could really be hurting your overall kind of sales and the growth of your company. So the first kind of set of studies really looked at bounce rates and time on site. So bounce rate is really, what's the likelihood that a user will leave your website after visiting a particular page without navigating further. And time on site is just, how long is a user actually spending on your overall website. And I don't know if you might have guessed it, but when users notice typos on your website, they're much more likely to bounce right away. And not only bounce right away, and kind of a corollary to that is they end up spending less time on your site. And so at the end of the day, it's very difficult to convince a user to leverage your solution, to submit a contact form if they're leaving right away. If they're spending less time on your website, it gives you less of an opportunity to kind of convince them of whatever it is that you're trying to convince them of. So you're losing customers. And not only that, bounce rates and time on sites historically have been two of the many factors used by search engines to kind of evaluate the quality of websites and to determine the overall rankings. And so there might also be potential SEO implications from this increase in bounce rates and a decrease in time on site. A third study looked at, it's kind of surveyed users, I believe it was in the UK, and asked them kind of their likelihood of purchasing from a website when they noticed, errors on the homepage and other pages. And not surprisingly, users are much less likely to purchase from a website when they notice typos. 59% of users answered in the affirmative there. And so once again, a potential significant decrease in your company's ability to sell if the users that notice the typos um, end up avoiding purchasing from your website and moving forward in the sales funnel. And then a different set of studies really looked at the kind of the efficiency and the overall success of marketing campaigns, things like your ads in AdWords and ads on Google and other search engines. And similarly, when there's an increase in typos, there's a decrease in the click-through rate. And if you know how the Google algorithm works, what they're trying to do is match somebody searching for something with their advertisers, but their singular goal is to maximize the total amount of revenue, which is how much is an advertiser paying times how likely is a user to click on their ad. And so when your overall ads have a much lower click-through rate because of typos, you end up having to spend a lot more money to be able to kind of be featured within the relevant searches on Google and other search engines. And so you end up spending more money to advertise and reach the same number of customers. And so this list is not kind of exhaustive, but it's really meant to show that there's a real impact to business. It's not something theoretical, but having these typos, it is scaring potential customers away. It could be having SEO implications. Customers are much less likely to purchase just because they have that seed of doubt about the overall legitimacy, the quality of a company, and the marketing campaigns that you might be pursuing will likely be less effective and less kind of ROI efficient. And so, how do agencies currently proofread their websites? One, I'll just start with every agency is different. So your approach might be different than the list I have here. This list is also not meant to be exhaustive, but through our conversations with a lot of our agency partners, they all mention kind of some combination of these factors that they've used to proofread their website before working with Triple Checker. The most common way is manual review. Some teams might have one or multiple employees checking all of their content. Depending on the size of the agency, you might have a QA quality control team that does it. You might not, but it's quite common to leverage kind of the manual review process. Unfortunately, when it comes to manual review, humans tend to be both error prone in making mistakes, and the way our brains work out of just efficiency, often we're very quick to kind of skim content and miss obvious typos, especially if it's content that we either wrote ourselves or content that we've read many times over. So that approach tends to be foul prone. Then there's copying and pasting to Grammarly or ChatGPT or another LLM. We're huge fans of both Grammarly and ChatGPT. We use them both. The challenge there becomes you can't actually paste a whole website into Grammarly or ChatGPT. At least you can't yet. Who knows? You might be able to do that in the future. And so it's a little bit limited to a single block of text. Relying on your browser spell check. This is a common way that people have spell checked their content for a long time. Unfortunately, it tends to miss a lot of the typos as well. And then on rare occasions, some customers might even hire a professional proofreading agency to proofread their content, but that tends to be more expensive and not something that many companies would end up doing kind of frequently. And of course, all of the above. Now, one that we haven't come across, but at least I've read online, is there are also folks that tend to print every single page of their website and then manually proofread it that way, which is an interesting approach, but not one I would recommend, given it's not very environmentally friendly. And so, I guess before I go to the next slide, you might wonder, okay, lots of different approaches taken. Are they effective? If they were, I probably wouldn't be here giving this presentation. And so once again, I think I was also surprised when we started working on Triple Checker, how pervasive this problem is. So here, what we did at Triple Checker maybe a month ago or a couple months ago is we actually ran 15,000. So 15,000 different agency websites, web design agencies, SEO agencies, content marketing agencies. We proofread all of their websites using our technology and then ran them for typos, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors. And so the conclusion out of that analysis was that a majority of websites have these issues, 67% to be exact, when it comes to typos and spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. And then when you also incorporate broken links, that number jumps to 75%. So 3/4 of all the different companies out there that are selling these web design services, SEO services, content related services have noticeable errors on their website. That also does mean 25% of agencies do not. So then it comes down to kind of which bucket do you end up wanting to be in? And on the one hand, I recognize having a typo does not mean a company is less likely to provide a quality service, or having an error-free website in the reverse does not also imply that the company will provide a great level of service. But that doesn't mean that potential visitors won't leverage that in their decision-making process. These days, there's so many competitors that offer similar services at similar price points that customers are often looking for a reason not to work with somebody as they are looking for a reason to work with somebody. And so in these cases, by having typos, by having something that gives a customer a reason to look elsewhere, you're likely to push that customer to go to another agency, to go to another company, and then lose them for good. At the same time, yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but like humans are error prone. And another real world example, this is probably a month ago now. Yeah, I had asked one of our developers, I basically sent him an email and I said, here's one sentence on our website, and I want you to swap it with another sentence. It was pretty kind of simple change on the website, pretty simple instructions. A few hours later, they're like, done. I put it out of my mind. The next day, I get an email alert from Triple Checker. As you might have guessed, we use our own tool to proofread our own website, and it does it on a daily basis. It's constantly rescanning our website to make sure that we catch any typos before potential customers do. So I visited the report and it said, okay, you have one typo. This sentence has like a duplicate word. I believe it was like in. And it was a little bit, I guess I was a little bit flabbergasted because literally the original sentence did not have any typos and the new sentence did not have any typos. So how a simple swapping of one sentence to the other resulted in the developer adding an extra word that resulted in a typo. But I think it just speaks to the fact that even in a company like ours, with a singular focus of proofreading websites, made up of folks that really care about this problem. Otherwise, we wouldn't be working on it. We're just as likely to add a typo to our website and only catch it because we're using a service to proofread our website on a daily basis. So it's just a function of how humans are. We are naturally a little bit more careless than we'd like. And so, like I said, while it doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of an agency's service, attention to detail is a factor that customers are looking at. And so it is beneficial to having some sort of a tool that could help you just ensure that customer doesn't notice an error before you have a chance to fix it. And so this is a list of some of my favorites that we caught on these agencies that I mentioned that we had proofread. And you might be thinking that we made these up. These aren't real life, real world examples, but no, I mean, these are all screenshotted from various agency websites. And all these agencies, like I mentioned, are companies that are basically in the business of either designing and developing websites or providing SEO or some content related services. And so imagine yourself as a potential consumer, looking for an agency to proofread your website. How likely are you to move forward if that agency spells the word development wrong? Or, as you can see here, multiple agencies spelled the word website wrong. It's not a reach to think that as a potential consumer, you're less likely to move forward just because attention to detail ultimately is one of the uh, kind of features, benefits, expectations you have of any client you work with. And so when an agency doesn't have that, or at least you assume they don't have that because they have errors on their website, it just gives you all the more reason to look elsewhere. And I think about this all the time when I hire any service provider. Like, if any of the accounting firms I work with, if any of the law firms I work with had typos in their work deliverables, it would immediately raise a lot of question marks, a lot of red flags in my mind about how likely are they to make another mistake. And there's really no way to, I think, convince a customer, a potential customer, after they've caught one error, that you're never going to make another error again. And so while these are a little bit humorous, um, they are both real life examples and also just speak to the overall challenge of being able to catch these errors unless you're using some effective workflow on your website. And so briefly, I'll just go into Triple Checker and how we might be able to help. What we are is proofreading and spell checking solution. So what we're trying to do is really catch these types of errors on your website. So spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, broken links, and some of those other content errors mentioned earlier, placeholder text, outdated copyrights, etc. What makes us different, one is that we could proofread an entire website. That's ultimately the main challenge with using Grammarly or ChatGPT or any other great tools that can proofread a single block of text. You can have them proofread an entire website. There's no plugins or downloads. And then I would say, in my experience, the main challenge of keeping websites error-free is not the initial whether it's blog article that you put or the initial content that you add to your website. It's what happens days, weeks, months later. Throughout the life of any single web page, there will be revisions that take place. And even if you have a great workflow, which some agencies do, and a great process to proofread, the block of text, the content when you're adding it, it's not necessarily followed consistently by all individuals that have access to making changes to your website over time. And so that error-free web page on day one ends up having a lot of typos and mistakes on day 30. And then there's also factors that you can't control, external links. Those your website points to various other resources that existed when that initial web page was made, but then turn out not to exist or have been moved, months later. And it's factors like that that provide a worse experience for users and also can have SEO implications. And then just briefly, how we work with agencies. We both proofread their website and also we proofread all the websites they develop and manage for clients. And so this could save hours per website, minimize the back and forth, the costly revisions, and ultimately, what we're really trying to do is prevent clients being dissatisfied with the service. One of our agency partners told us, like, there's really nothing more embarrassing than when when you send a work product to a client, a website you design, and then they come back to you with some obvious typo. Even though that might be the smallest bit of what you provided, and maybe the website looks great, like that's the only thing the client noticed, and that ultimately becomes part of how they're evaluating basically the overall work product and what you did for them. And now I want to quickly um, show you a single kind of a report that we generated. So you have a feel for kind of what triple checker is like. So here we proofread this subdomain of Google, so cloud.google.com. I assume you could see the report because I changed the tabs. If not, let me know. And so in this report, what Triple Checker does, like I mentioned, it proofreads every single web page on your website. It starts at the home page and then kind of set all of the internal pages linked to from that home page, and then all of the pages linked to by those pages, and kind of cascades down, so it can ultimately capture every single web page that you have, and every single web page that could be ultimately indexed by a search engine and therefore visited by potential users. And then for every single typo or error, it highlights what that error is. It provides a suggested correction, and then also the text from the page for some context to make it very, very easy to find the error and fix it. And same goes with broken links. It'll visit every single internal link and external link, and it'll tell you on every single page if there was a link that no longer exists, is a 404 page, etc. And then users can also mark things as false positive, despite the fact that I like to say we capture 100% of errors and we have 0% false positives. Maybe we'll get there one day, but it still happens periodically that one of the errors maybe is a false positive. Maybe it's a person's name that we don't recognize as being a person's name. So it gives a user an ability to mark as false positive so the error doesn't come again. And then ultimately, we also have a few other features that customers can take advantage of, like excluding certain web pages from being scanned, or only scanning certain web pages, looking for particular terms. So we've had situations where a company rebranded and they wanted us to capture every instance of their former brand being mentioned. And so you can now, normally we would not capture a former brand in our error report because it's not really an error, but we have different functionalities like that where we can help users kind of scan their website for particular terms that they want. And so that's kind of the presentation as a whole. Anybody can go to triplechecker.com. You can try proofing your website, see if it has errors. And if we can ever be helpful, like my email is here. We'd love to work with anybody. If anybody has suggestions as well for other functionalities and features they like, we're all ears. Now I just wanted to open it up to any questions.
I think that what I find fascinating about it is the connection to or searching for lost broken links, because I have found that I know in working on the AMI website, we're going through the history of all the articles that Drew has ever published over, many years, that some of the links don't work. And I find it frustrating when I'm on my own website, or not my own website, but when I'm on other websites that are, a list of tools that are leading me to other articles or something, and it's just a series of broken links, can be incredibly frustrating. I find it something that can search those incredibly valuable, because it's also not something you're going to see if you're looking at a website. You're not going to notice it as a typo because the URL is correct. And
Yep.
so you're not going to know that it actually leads nowhere or to something that you don't think.
And I think the challenge there becomes, and I touched on this a little bit, is sometimes it's one thing if it's an internal broken link, and maybe you change the structure of your website, and so now all the internal links don't work. Like that certainly happens, and maybe you're partially responsible, but it's almost like the external links, like great guides, resources that once lived on a particular page, and so you as a company didn't make a mistake. You pointed to an actual live website, but then lots of things can happen from now till the end of time, and now you have all these broken links without realizing. but your customers realize it because they're clicking on it, being
Right.
taken to a broken page, and or Google's bots are noticing that, and then ultimately factoring that into their kind of SEO ranking. So definitely, it's a
Mhm.
common pain point. Broken links are quite common on all websites.
I do have one question that came in. So Haley is asking if the report can find errors, but you have to manually change them, right? Like it's not like a
All
file.
right. Yeah. So we have no kind of access settings to be able to adjust any of the content on your website. We are working on some basically plugins for the Wix and the Webflows and other website builders of the world. And through those, users could actually grant your plugin access to not just catching the errors, but also adjusting it. But outside of those systems, yeah, the website owner still has to kind of make the changes on their own.
Yeah. And I would imagine that would be the goal of the next evolution would be to be able to autocorrect, not autocorrect, but I suppose would be able to do that. What Haley is asking, um, as far as that would be the ideal would be to fix this as you find it instead of just give me a report that you would be able to fix it on the fly or auto have it correct automatically if it finds something. Um, right.
Yeah, I mean that would be great. I don't think that, like I said, it's probably not realistic for most websites unless it was through one of those tools, just because the website owner would have to kind of grant us you know the right kind of admin permissions to be able to like adjust their like you do to your website designer or developer. So that's not kind of on the roadmap at
Mm.
this time. And it's true, like the end to end would be ideal. I guess what we found is for most website owners, um, it doesn't take that long to fix it. The challenge that they face is they don't know about the issues, and so once they know, they're able to quickly adjust them. But yeah, it's no different than, I guess, proofreading any bit of content, but ultimately the final step has to be taken by the website owner.
Do you have any other questions? Anybody? It's a pretty small group, so if you want to unmute and ask your question, you are welcome to. Um, or if you want to type them in, you can. Or we can wrap up early. Um, so I'll give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll close it up if no one's got any questions. Well, no one's jumping up with anything, so I think we're just gonna wrap it up early. Thank you, Dimitri, for coming on today and talking us through some of these things. It's fascinating, some of the spelling errors that you shared, even on the screen of some of them that you showed that were screen caps. It took me a minute to actually see the typo because obviously, as we were talking about earlier, the brain automatically it knows what the word is supposed to be, and so it will fill in instead of actually reading what the word is. So I think that's fascinating.
No,
Um,
I mean, I really appreciate kind of this opportunity. Really glad to give this presentation. I guess my final, last thing message would just be, our website, or you could visit our website and engage kind of like a scan for free. So it's something I tell everybody. Like, there's no reason you should at least not, take it for a spin one time and at least be aware of all the typos on your website so you can fix them. And then, whether it's something that I think would be beneficial for you long term or not, I guess is a different question. But at least I highly suggest you try it one time and at least fix all the mistakes you have on your website now, so that other people
right.
don't notice them before you do.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of aha moments when people are like, it's been the text that's been on their website since the 90s. There's still a typo that's sitting in there that they didn't recognize or didn't
I would
realize.
say that's actually the most rewarding part of it. In my prior company, even though we were providing a lot of value, I probably have on one hand the number of customers that reached out to us just on their own, being amazed. However, with Triple Checker, it happens every day. Despite the fact that it might be something small, like we just caught a typo on your website, the fact that it's been there for 5 years and you had no idea, people really have this, like, I don't know, it's like eureka kind of, like there's this magical moment they have and they're incredibly appreciative. And so that's probably the most rewarding thing for me, because I think, those people, I think care about typos as much as I do. So the
Right.
fact that we're able to help them with it, it definitely feels great.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you everybody for taking some time out of your day to join us. This has been helpful and insightful, and I hope you'll reach out to Dimitri if you have any other questions or comments. You can also reach me at AMI. I'm Shadley at agencymanagementinstitute.com is my email, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, right? Yeah, in 2 weeks we will be back with another episode, and I look forward to seeing everyone then. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.